All right, so the first thing we're going to discuss here is the Elasticsearch migration. I just wanted to bring up the conversation about the dedicated node pool. It sounds like we've agreed to put it on the default node pool for now, given that there isn't a better choice. I guess the issue for that is linked to the epic, if you want to comment on it. Does anyone have any additional thoughts on this or not? If not, we can move on.
Is this a decision that we can revert in future? I mean, it's just a matter of changing the deployment and they would just move to another pool.
Yeah, it's super easy. It's a bit, it's a bit of a pain to decommission a pool, but as far as migrating to a new pool, that's super simple, and I think what we'll eventually do is move registry to a dedicated pool and then have this default pool as just the generic one we use for things that don't have a better place.
Can you explain why it's expensive or a pain to decommission them?
It's a pain to decommission because you have to migrate the workloads carefully. So when you start tearing down the node pool, you need to first migrate the workloads and then it's just like it's a high touch operation.
Yeah.
I think the Terraform operations required to make that happen is the more difficult part because of the way our Terraform module handles an array, and creating node pools in a certain order screws things up.
Yeah,
it's the administrative
it's kind of
cost.
A pain. Yeah, it's kind of a pain. We've done it a few times now, but it's still kind of a pain. Cool. Next up is the console agent. So after Elasticsearch, we're probably going to look at Git or WebSockets. The first thing we need to do is get the console agent installed in the cluster. I think we're just going to use the upstream chart for this. We're going to install it as a daemon set. Unfortunately, they don't have an official, well, they have a chart, but it isn't published. So the way that they recommend installing it is to clone it and then install it locally. So we have some options here. One is that we mirror it to GitLab and then publish it on charts.gitlab.io. We could mirror it and add it as a submodule to the project that's installing it, or we could just add the GitHub repo as a submodule to the project that's installing it.
Are we using console only for DNS queries for load balancing and things like that?
Yeah, that's all we're using it for now.
So can we keep this outside of the cluster and just providing it as, I don't remember the name in Kubernetes when you say this is a service and lives outside of the cluster, so just point here?
Well, I mean, you mean like we would make DNS queries to a service that's running outside of the cluster?
Yeah.
Yeah, could do that. I don't know if that's wise to do though, because like we would then have to, you mean like we would just do a DNS query against a console agent running somewhere else, but we would still have to install it.
Yeah, but I guess we have it installed somewhere because we are using it.
They're all installed locally. Every node has.
Oh, every node has its own.
Every VM has console agent installed. Yeah. We have a
But
console server cluster, but. Yeah.
What about, like, just, I mean, while we're suggesting those ideas, what about a pod that actually runs in Kubernetes that has the agent and they make the call against that? The other thing is it's not configured at like the system resolver, right? Like the application has like an IP address and a port in it, which makes it a bit easier to do whatever we want to do. So you could have one, right? Yeah, it's a bit weird, but.
Well, no, this is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to have the console agent running in a single pod as a daemon set, so one per node. And then the problem is that we just need to install the chart, and the chart is managed upstream by console and HashiCorp console, and they don't publish it. They just have like a Git repository. So we either need to mirror it, or publish it ourselves. I don't know what to do. I think maybe we could start with just creating a mirror and then using the Git submodule.
Why don't we just clone it with a SHA? Or is there others?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, so the issue is that we have a project that needs to be able to add the repo to Helm, right?
Yeah.
And you can't just add it using a Git path if it's not published. So you need to either clone it and add it locally on the file system, in which case the submodule makes the most sense. I don't know. I don't know if anyone has opinions on this. If not, I'll just choose something.
Just submodules are just not a great. But sorry, Skobek.
Nobody likes submodules, but.
And you were saying the other day that you were regretting something else.
Yeah, I definitely regret using a submodule for deployer. But maybe here it makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah, usually never makes sense to use them.
Well,
what about a fork? What about just running a fork and then manually updating it every now and again, or even having a CI job on that fork that kind of checks upstream and then fails a build if there's like, if it's behind or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, what we could do is we could have a pull mirror that publishes the chart to charts.gitlab.io, and then we pull it from charts.gitlab.io. So maybe we should just do that. I don't know.
Do we have a sense as to how often the chart will end up being updated?
No, I don't know, but I imagine pretty often. I mean, it's a pretty popular chart.
Yeah, but do we want to just keep upgrading console in our production infrastructure without even knowing if they are, I don't know, versioning it or something like that?
Yeah, of course not. So
yeah. But using a SHA and cloning in CI and just say, this is the last version that we tested. So we clone it, we put it in the I don't remember.
Yeah, then it's a submodule. That's exactly what a submodule
not really though.
It is. I mean, it's a SHA, right? It's a ref.
Yeah. The question is whether this is like a once-off, or if this is like, if it's a once-off, it doesn't even it's not worth the discussion. But if this is something that you're going to be doing, like, well, if this is a pattern, then it's worth like considering it, right?
Yeah.
And so how many other things do you think are there that are like this, that are going to have this like same pattern?
There may be a few.
Probably not that many, like a handful, like 3 or 4 maybe.
Yeah. I don't know.
So then maybe it's not that important because it's only a small number.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, so I think like doing it the submodule way is like the easiest, obviously, right? And having a submodule that references GitHub is actually even the easiest thing. But I don't know if we want to have a dependency on GitHub for our stuff. So if we don't do that, then we would need to create a pull mirror and reference that.
I think we need the pull mirror in any case. We remove a dependency, right? So things that can go wrong, let's say we need ops to deploy, right? So I would love to have the mirror on ops because I don't want to I have everything up and running, but GitHub is down and I can't deploy.
Well, this is a bigger problem because like we don't have charts redundancy yet on dev or ops, right? We don't have a mirror on dev or ops for charts. There's no pages site on dev. So we already have this problem.
Okay, so let's move it where everything else is. So it's still one dependency instead of one.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Okay. As a DRI, I will make a decision and I will just do it, whatever. Maybe I'll think about it and start on Monday because I don't think I want to do it today. Skarbek, you're next.
The only thing I've got is I know we've been looking at the Elastic migration to be at least investigating it. I don't know how close we are to executing it, but I would like to stress that we really need to remove the allow failure on the Kubernetes deployments and deployer. We're still getting failures quite often, and like we had one today, and I don't know why it failed, but like it at least went through the entire pipeline before it got to the point where the job itself inside of Kubernetes failed. So there, I pasted the epic. I just want to
Can
stress
you,
that.
I mean, maybe let's figure out why it failed during this. This is a demo. Maybe we can just like trace it and figure out why it failed.
That's a pretty good idea, Jarv. Let's
Can you
do that.
send me the pipeline link? I can do it.
Yeah. Pipeline. Whoops. Lost the agenda. Pipeline is there. We'll probably need to look in maybe stack driver for the failure.
Oh, so it actually triggered the deployment.
Yeah, it triggered just fine, but it ended up rolling back because something went wrong, and I don't know what wrong is yet.
This is the ongoing deployment.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Could it be that it just we had too many pods? Because we have a lot of pods in staging, and that it just timed out.
Well, this is production.
Production.
I would hope production is not bound to, because we have a 30-minute time limit. I would hope production is large enough where we don't run into that kind of problem.
Yeah, no, production should work. The staging,
Yeah.
sometimes we have problems because we have this load generator that's like,
Yep.
Yeah. So,
is this happened during the registry upgrade? Because the deployment started at the same time, but before it reached that point, the pipeline is very long. So maybe they were
Registry is deployed slightly differently. We would have seen a registry failure well before production, based on the failures that we've seen in the past with Sidekiq.
So I guess let's go to stack driver. Maybe we can just search for the shop. When was this? About an hour ago.
If you want to search by the deployment name, I'm putting that in the agenda.
Okay.
That might be easier. And just for awareness, I plucked that name out of the dashboard in Grafana. So in Grafana, we were running only 6 pods at the time the deployment occurred. So it spun up 6 pods and then it failed. So it rolled back.
Just to have more context. So this deployment was supposed to upgrade the project exporter.
Because it was supposed to upgrade the memory bound shard of Sidekiq.
So we moved to, okay, we have this thing. Okay.
Alessia, I don't know how much you've been following along, but since we've had Project Export inside of Kubernetes, we've shifted over to the work that Scalability has been doing, and we have migrated over to shards now. So the memory bound shard contains Project Export and some other random queue called new design version something along those lines. So it contains 2 queues now, but that other queue is so lightweight, it doesn't even show up on the radar.
And it's probably not memory bound.
Yeah, I asked that question, but someone responded saying that sometimes when the image conversions do their
there's
job,
image conversion in design management, right? So we're
yeah,
doing image
that might be
conversion.
memory bound, but I guess so far we haven't hit those types of resource constraints yet.
Okay.
So now question number 2, why we are looking at Stackdriver instead of our own Elasticsearch?
That's a good question. Because not all of the logs are currently getting to Elasticsearch. We have a log sync that sends the GKE logs to Elasticsearch, but we see a lot of errors because of the large number of fields. And honestly, like Elasticsearch is like, you have to be very careful when you send logs to it, because like you have too many fields, it's not happy. If the data types change, it's not happy. It's
like for certain things like application, like when you're trying to search across like what 1,000 users are doing, you know, as a trend, it's great. But yeah, for logs, if you just kind of want to dump your log somewhere, it's probably a bit overkill.
So I wonder if it's the database schema that's the problem. Let's see here. This is like really hard to read. It's a little bit better. So the current is 0429 and the code base is 0506. Well, that's not going to work, right?
Well, that's a little concerning. Did we have a silent failure with our database migrations? But like, wouldn't that stop everything else from starting? Because everything else is deployed properly.
Well, I mean, one, I guess, is only Kubernetes has this schema version check. so it's possible that things are really screwed up and we just don't know. But I am reading this right.
Wait. But if we have a background, wait. If we have a background migration, any kind of post-deployment migration within the code base, this check will always fail.
Is this?
But this is the schema. This would have been This would happen before the post-deploy migrations, correct?
That's the problem, right? Because when you write the code of the post-deployment migration, you upgrade the structure SQL. So the scheme, the code base version, that number is up in the future during the deployment. Because when you write the code, you run everything, and as an author of the merge request, you are supposed to upgrade the schema dump with the new number. But if you check those number when you spin up the pods, it will fail because if there is a post-deployment migration, it has not yet run.
Why would a post-deploy migration mangle the schema of a database? I thought that was only for database migrations.
There's no such thing as a post-deployment migration in Ruby on Rails. It's just something that we built on top of that, and so schema either is. So either you run or you don't run the migration. So when you do things locally and you have to prepare your merge request, you have to run also the post deployment and this update it because it runs that migration.
All right, so we know why this failed. I bet you now that the deploy has completed, post-deploy migrations are currently running. So Alessio, maybe you and I should work together to see if we could retry the Kubernetes job
after
that, and let's see if it finishes, and we'll document this. Jarv,
do you guys, or does anyone know how to just simply check the schema version from either the Rails console or the database console?
I do not.
Oh,
Because I can just
on
check
the
that
database,
quickly.
it's a schema version that. Okay, got it. So right now is 2020 0429 something.
All right, so that means that it would still fail because the code base is at 0506, or what we deployed is 0506.
But we are running the post-deployment migration now, right?
Are we?
This is what, isn't this? Yeah, it's
Yeah,
running
it's still
at the
running
moment.
right now.
So
Okay.
once it's done, I mean, I can also look at the log if there are real migrations. So it's still in the early phase. It's just booting Ansible. By the way, if you want to see the schema, it's select star from schema migrations, ordered by version limit 1.
Oh,
Can you copy and paste that somewhere, Alessio? Because I would like to remember that for
Sure.
the future. Thank you, man.
I will paste it in the agenda.
okay, so Scarbeck, that's not like a show-stopping issue. I guess it's something we need to, well, maybe it is a show-stopping issue. We need to figure out what the best
It definitely is.
is here. Yeah.
I think I know we've been working on making sure the timestamp in our tag has been the same. I don't know if that work has been completed, but that's been the #1 issue that we've run into in the past. Lately, I've been seeing a lot of SSL failures inside of our ops pipelines. I don't know where in our process that SSL failing is actually occurring, like whether it's reaching out to GitLab or whether it's reaching out to GitHub or whatever. I don't know yet because I haven't delved deeply into it, but this is just a new one. I've been capturing a list. So far, I've got 3 items in issue 806 that's tied to that epic. I think you and I need to work together to figure out how to prioritize this particular, maybe this issue or epic in tandem with all the other work that we've got going on. I just haven't had the time to pick up this epic at all.
So the timestamp issue is not actually the timestamp. It's just that when we tag Omnibus or we tag CNG, we always need to tag the other one.
Yeah.
And
when
that's
there are
just,
changes, yeah.
Yeah. So normally, like 90% of the time, that happens because Rails changes. But if there's an Omnibus change, then without a Rails change, we need to tag CNG as well. So that's the fix for that. The fix for this, I'm not really sure, other than disabling the check. I'm not sure what else we can do, right?
There was a post-deployment migration and it's run. So I'm gonna retry the.
Sure.
Is it fine to retry it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
fine.
check the schema first.
Yeah, the schema is 2020 05 06.
Perfect. Yeah. Then yes, we should retry that job. Jared, I suggest that for this particular issue, we open up a an issue with the charts for the distribution team, and I think proposing an option to skip this check would be wise, and I think that'll be met with good criticism because you don't want this shipped to customers. But I think the ability for us, this will be important unless there's some way.
No, this is also is needed for customers. I mean, if you, this is a Kubernetes installation, right? So you can't expect to just pause everything and upgrade and then restart. So a deployment is not something that happens just because you flip. So
I doubt there are many people who skip post-deploy migrations when they run migrations, though. I'm sure most of them just run migrations. They run everything.
But this is how the chart behaves. So charts by default can run everything up front. How can it work? Once the post migration, they're gonna have application failure.
Work?
The default is to do everything. The default for migrations is to do everything, including post-deploy migrations. So
but if those take a long time to run, you're not going to have a working GitLab install for quite a while.
Yeah.
Well, I think for most databases, those migrations are fairly fast.
Yeah, we are a pretty large install.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should just get a issue open and have a discussion there and figure out what to do. What's the best route to go about doing this?
Yeah.
This will be important for the distribution team to be aware of. Alessio, did you hit the retry button?
It's running.
Can you post a link somewhere? Because I don't see a retried job anywhere.
Where is the document? Here we go.
I wish this job spit out the URL for the pipeline earlier, because right now it's just showing me the API URLs, so I can't view the actual pipeline quickly, at least. I'm kind of disappointed by that.
If it's just the API and gets work, there should be a web URL element there, so you can click there.
Yeah, we're just printing out the wrong thing is all.
Yeah, sure, but if you need
or
it
print
now,
out, we should be able to print both out, really.
Skarbek, is there anything we could do to make these failures a bit easier to diagnose without having to even look at logs, but just see it in the CI job output?
I've considered that. There is a way inside of Kubernetes, you could run a kube control command that will output something that gets stored in the event log when a failure occurs. The problem, though, is that this upgrade happens inside of Helm. So I don't know how to integrate a kube control command that will look at a failed deploy, look back at the correct deployment to get that information. And I also don't know if we store the correct information in those logs. So this would be something we would have to investigate to see what we could do and if we're storing the right data to get that information so that we don't have to look at logs. But I'll create an issue to address that because I'm curious about that as well. I'll add that to this exact epic actually because I think that's the perfect place to put it.
Can't we just like tail the event logs somewhere during the deploy and then make it available as an artifact to download or something like that?
That's a good idea. I like that. I'll add that as a suggestion on that issue.
Okay. Is there anything else?
I guess not. We're just watching the deploy retry itself, so. Shall we call it?
Yeah, let's call it. I have one question before we end the call that you might know.
Should I stop the recording first?
Yeah, you can stop the recording.